Andres and I, we still keep saying, when are we going to New Mexico? We got to put that on the schedule. We have our invite, and we got to take you up on it. We're like Braden up on it. So we're coming. We're on the way.
And I have so many friends recently that they're just coming through like this, like from all over the United States. And
Oh,
not necessarily just for ceremony or retreat, but there's a lot of good things happening here. It's a state that is full of opportunity, if you look at it that way, because we are top 3 most poor states every single year, very underserved population, and that is also informed by the intergenerational trauma in the Hispanic community and also the Native
yeah.
population. We have huge acreage of land that it belongs to the Pueblos here, to Native Americans. And I'm so grateful for the land because it can't be developed. And I'm like, thank you, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
It's
it really
nice.
keeps the nature and the beautiful energy that the natives have and bring in, the reverence for nature is very palpable here. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, we'd love to have.
I'm convinced my dream scenario, and I can say this on the podcast, but my dream scenario is to have the Native Americans be the people who hold space for these psychedelic events on their land with their
Mm.
reverence and be the people that hold space. Like if you can have Las Vegas that can get people all messed up, you have to have a place to send them where they can get right. And who better than natives to do that, hold space like that?
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And it's part of them and what they do, and really helping them through the trauma, helping get them water on their land. Talk about water.
Yes.
Have
Yeah.
them have electricity. I cannot believe that it is 2024, Zappy, and here we are. There's many parts of the Pueblos, the reservations, that don't have running water. They don't have electricity. Like when we try to have a Zoom call, they have to like drive 30 minutes to some place so they can have Wi-Fi. And so there's definite systemic things that are at
Yeah.
play that need to also be addressed. But I do see that as the consciousness is evolving for all of us, that is also shifting because there's a lot more. Hey, wait a minute, what's happening here? I'm not so under the influence of so many different, holy substance use disorder is top in the nation
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
And as we know, it's trauma begets addiction, and
Mhm.
PTSD results in all of these things. And so, and then it gets passed down to the next generations. And
Yeah.
so, here we truly have an opportunity. And I really want New Mexico to be the flagship for mental health and healing.
That would be beautiful. Should be.
Yeah. And it goes along with what you're saying right now. But
Uh-huh. Yes, that it should be. And that could be the place we send everybody for their reboot. Because, like I said, if you can have a place where people can get addicted to gambling, alcohol, drugs, I mean, you have to feel like if there is a way out, you have to give it to them. So send them to New Mexico and let them sit with the natives. They hold the space. They have some peyote, some mushrooms, something like that, and send them back. Maybe ibogaine if necessary. Even for the natives, I'd like to see that be like, all native people get ibogaine therapy for free immediately in order to reverse the trauma-based drinking and stuff like that that's in there.
yeah, and it's deep. They start on this path at a very young age. Yeah, preteen, usually.
Mhm.
And it's very sad. I've had many, many, many patients in the hospital in their 20s that I've had to put on hospice because of drinking. And I've spoken with families or patients who've survived, and they say, when I go to the graveyard, 12 of my cousins are right there, and I don't want to be that. And it's interesting, and talk to some, and they say, these rituals, they start at a young age, like 11, 12, and they don't even know what they're drinking. They're just, gathering. It's a ritualistic thing, but they have no idea if this is alcohol that was made. Is it moonshine? How was it made? We don't know, right? And it becomes a game of,
Mm.
you know, anyways,
Yeah.
Deep. It's
Wow. What a
deep and it's
slippery
very
slope.
sad.
Yeah. Yeah. So sad.
Yeah. I
Very
would
fixable
love
with psychedelics. So yeah.
and guidance. I recently finished an intensive training with Center for Mind Body Medicine. I don't know if you know about them.
Mm.
It was founded by Dr. James Gordon, who's a psychiatrist from Harvard about like 20 years ago. And he continues to be the founder and CEO of the organization. And they go in places where there is trauma, live trauma, such as Ukraine, such as Iran, such as Israel, Gaza. When the earthquake happened in Turkey, they go in and they help individuals, including children, get through the psychological trauma that they're sustaining from the physical trauma and the immediate
Yeah.
danger that they're in. I mean, they're rebels and they're doing this like drawings and imagery and guided imagery and meditation and shaking and dancing. I mean, transforming the trauma that's happening. It's fantastic work. And
Cool.
bringing that, and that's what I'm doing right now, coupling that with psychedelics
Yeah. Yeah.
because
Because those things without psychedelics, only a small percentage of people are going to be able to reorient their mind away from the big thing, like a bomb might land on you any seconds. Crazy. But
yeah.
all right, beautiful. You tell me where to start. I'm just here to talk and answer questions and see where it goes.
Yeah. I want to know about you, Zappy. I know some of the work that you do now, which is fantastic. Like the water project is just mind blowing to me. I'm like, yes. And I'd love to hear about that. I love to hear about the psychedelic work you're doing with athletes and celebrities, people of influence and how that is really changing the landscape. And most importantly, I like to know about you and your journey in a capacity that you want to share. How did you get to this point and then getting into what you're doing right now? Live.
So I was lucky enough when I was younger to have this incredible psychedelic experience where I took a large dose of psychedelics. I was with a friend, and at the peak of the experience, I looked at my hand and I saw that it was trillions of atoms and they were just vibrating at this certain frequency, all of them. And then I looked over at my friend and he was the same exact atoms, but a slightly different frequency than me. I looked at the table, it was vibrating faster. I was like, oh my God, like my five senses are muting everything down. Really, everything is energy like this. And when I came out of that trip, I never forgot that. And I just went through my life doing my thing. And I did everything that society told me to do to be fulfilled. And this is where in 2011, I sort of had my own um, spiritual midlife crisis where I did everything they told me to do, go to school, get a job, make money, have a family, be a philanthropist. You're going to be totally fulfilled. And I was sitting there and I was like, oh, okay, I'm having some nice experiences, but I'm not totally fulfilled. And I don't even know what I'm doing here, to be honest with myself. And so I was like, what am I going to do? Why would this even be worth continuing? And I thought, well, what if I was to go back inside my mind like I did when I was younger, but do it with a lot more intention? And I'd heard about people doing ayahuasca down in the jungle with shamans. And I thought, oh, wow, like that, a guided journey like that to intentionally look at myself, to get some answers and some healing. Like that sounds almost exactly what I need. And so after about a year of thinking about that, I finally convinced myself that I was ready and it was time and I really wanted to go sit with a shaman. And, I had thought back to these experiences I'd had. Always had I worked on Wall Street and had a career being a vice president at Bear Stearns, an investment bank. And I'd done the internet when it came along. I was big into domain names and I bought and sold beer.com, diamond.com, and creditcards.com and made millions of dollars and all these experiences. Part of that whole process, I always had film crews and people shooting commercials and stuff with me. So I thought, if I'm going to go down the jungle, I really want to bring a film crew with me because, like, if it works, I have to share it. And if it's nothing there, I'd want to share, my experience. So I had that. And I got lucky enough that one of the people I was making film with knew Michelle Rodriguez, the actress from Fast and Furious. And we went over to her house and invited her to come to Peru. And she was like locked in, and she was like, yeah, you know what? I've wanted to do this also for the last year or two, and it just hasn't been the right time. But like, if you guys are doing this in a couple weeks, she's like, I'm in. And she went back in her, I'll never forget, she went back in her bedroom and she came back out with her passport, and she handed me her passport, and she's like, all right, like, let's do it. And I was like, oh my God, this is happening. Like, there's no way I can get out of this right now. Even though I was, of course, still slightly nervous about going to the jungle and drinking ayahuasca. But it was on from there, and we went down there. We had this transformative experience with ayahuasca, which is a root and a vine that they make this tea out of, and you drink it, ideally with a shaman in the jungle. And that experience changed my life. I, met God. I hung out with God. It turns out she's a woman. And when I came out of this thing, several hours later, yeah, it was so strange because we were all different sized people and we drank different amounts of ayahuasca, but several hours later, we all came out at the exact same moment. It was like the ayahuasca frequency just like left the room, and we were all looking around going, did you just come out? Oh my God, how is that? And then I just started laughing, Lita, because I was like, my God, I just got the whole cosmic joke, human joke, which is you got God with the beard and Buddha, Muhammad, Jesus, all these men. And I was actually with God, and it's a woman. So fundamentally, every religion pretty much is flawed from the start, that, it's at least 50% a woman, let's say. But I was with, the creative energy of God, Mother Nature, Pachamama, they call it. And I had this freeing experience where, basically as I was there with God, God said to me, she said, do you know how you're breathing right now? And I was like, no. Like, do you know how you're, growing your hair, digesting your food, like you're doing it? Do you know how? And I was like, no. And then God was basically like, if you don't know how you're breathing, what makes you think I need your help? And I was like, oh, wow, you're right. Like, I mean, I don't even know how I'm breathing. Why am I getting all upset? Because, oh, these people over here, they're not listening to me. They're not, they're bad. I was like, I don't even know how I'm breathing. Like, what am I going to do? And God just said, joy this miracle that you're in. It was the message. And as I came out of that, I was like, wow, that changes everything. I don't have to like have a burden of trying to change the world. Just, ayahuasca said, in this time, go back and share this. And in this time, this is the time where, ayahuasca and this plant medicine has to come out of the jungle to America, to Europe. It can't be everybody has to come down here and sit with a shaman. No, this is going to be in Los Angeles, New York City, and go share. And so I was like, I came back and I was like, oh my God, you got to go sit with a shaman. I'm telling everybody. And the sad part was that all the people in my life that really, really needed it at that time, they were the ones saying to me, oh, you know what, Zappy, I can't do it. Like, I tell my family I'm going to the jungle to sit with a shaman right now, they will probably Baker act me. They'll put me in a mental institution. I wish I could, but I can't. And I was like, oh, man, this is so frustrating. I have to find this Western approach. And before I found the Western approach, I actually wound up, having as a psychonaut, a self-proclaimed psychonaut, where I've done all these psychedelics known to man and had all these incredible experiences and realized that they're each different frequencies and they have, attributes, be they male and female, and for health and addiction and wellness and all these things. And but the one that I had never done was a plant medicine called iboga, which is an African root, which is known to be able to break a heroin addiction, opiate, meth, alcohol, gambling in one 12-hour session. And I was just like, how can that be? Like, I've been in all these other psychedelic situations. None of those were going to clear up something like that. And so I convinced myself to go do iboga in the right set and setting with medical supervision and so forth. And, had that incredibly transformative experience where I understood how it is that it can break your addiction overnight. It's a real look at yourself. And, they say that the ayahuasca is the mother and the San Pedro cactus is the father. And the grandfather is the iboga. And it really is. It's sort of like if you want tough love from your grandfather to show you why you're disrupted and how you need to change, this is the path. And it is a, 12-hour roller coaster. Um, but for me, I thought about it. I was like, when I came out, you feel mentally so good, physically. They just had a study come out saying that you're physiologically 1.3 years younger after you do an ibogaine treatment. And so I was like, oh my God, like I feel so good. I feel mentally clear. And I, started to bring people down there who had addictions and things like that. And when I went back to, to doing what I was doing, I was showing my movie, The Reality of Truth, the one with Michelle Rodriguez I was showing it around the country. And that movie now, thankfully, because of how good Michelle is, The Reality of Truth has been seen over 25 million times. It's on Amazon Prime, it's on YouTube, Gaia, all these places. And it's said to have caused over 1 million people to have a psychedelic experience because they watched the movie. And I really believe it because, like I said, Michelle's so good that the movie ends and people are always like, I want to do plant medicine. I think I'm ready right now. All the questions and fears have been eliminated by watching that movie. And so I was showing it, and this is the evolution of, leave it to the universe. I didn't really know what to do necessarily, but I just was showing the movie, and somebody came out up to me after a screening and they said, hey, I'm friends with Lamar Odom, the basketball player, Kardashian, and he's not in a great place right now. I just saw the movie and I think, like, would you talk to him about plant medicine, psychedelics and stuff? So I was like, and I met with Lamar and I convinced him and his people that he should come with me initially, let me film it, but to do a ketamine treatment. And for people that don't know, ketamine is a FDA approved Schedule 3 anesthetic that has been shown to be 70% effective treating even treatment resistant depression. And so you and I talked about the way that they found out that the ketamine worked was they were doing amputations out in the battlefield in Vietnam, and they were using all kinds of anesthetics, ketamine, ether, morphine, these things, and they were doing the amputations. They looked back after Vietnam and they realized that all the people that had the ketamine for anesthetic had not committed suicide at anywhere near the rates that the other people had. So they were like, wow, what's going on here? They brought it to Yale. They did a huge study, 1,000 person study, and came up with low dose ketamine is effective for treatment resistant depression. So I was like, oh my God, wow, this is like, could be, when I found it, I was like, wow, this could be amazing. Because what happened was when I came back to the States and I was telling everybody about plant medicine, somebody told me about this ketamine. And I was like, wow, that sounds absolutely incredible. Never tried it. The Yale study looks rock solid. So I convinced the doctor down here in Florida to give me the treatment, the Yale protocol of 6 treatments over 2 weeks. Because the idea is that you have this ketamine experience where you go into this present moment awareness and all that chatter in your mind just slows down and goes away. But after that experience, that 35-minute experience is over, in the hours after, it's actually growing new neural pathways in your brain when it metabolizes. So this is, of course, what Elon Musk is doing and having great, benefit from, both from a depression standpoint, but also building his brain to peak performance where he's at. A lot of celebrities and people, very recently have started doing it. But what happened for me was I brought Lamar to do the ketamine, and he had never gone inside his own mind. He'd always been told that psychedelics were dangerous, and as an African American male, if something went wrong, he could be shot, he could be put in a mental institution, and it made sense to me. I was like, oh, I get it. That I wouldn't have touched it either. And so he went inside this first ketamine treatment, and he said it felt like he went to heaven but came back. And he's like, it was so beautiful. I was able to sort of relax myself and have some experience of that. I brought him around to the top ketamine doctors in the country and filmed it doing their protocols with Lamar. And the idea is that you do several treatments to build up enough of those new neural pathways to have like a really strong foundation. And then maybe you would do a booster every 3 months or every month or every 6 months, whatever feels right for you. And so once he got some experience going inside his mind, I said, look, I think I'm gonna have to bring you down to Mexico to do iboga, this ibogaine, which is where they isolate just the alkaloids in the iboga, and they give you a flood dose, 1 gram, 1,000 milligrams of this iboga, and you have this incredible 12 to 24-hour experience. And Lamar came down there, and the doctor gave me ibogaine, and he had this incredible experience of his mom had died when he was 12 years old, Lamar, because his the addiction had everything to do with trauma and unaddressed trauma. His mom died when he was 12 years old. He had a son die at 6 months old. Like all this stuff, he just suppress it, and people would come by, and because he's a celebrity and a champion, they'd be, oh, take some of this, come gamble with us. Whatever he had to do, just not to sit there and think about that situation. So in the ibogaine, in that experience, he heard his mother's voice for the first time in like almost 30 years. He heard her voice. It's like incredible for him. He saw his son who died at 6 months old. He got to see the son, spend time with him, and watch him grow to be like 8 or 9 years old, then grow to be a teenager that he would be today. And he hung out with them. And he's like, just like that alone, for anybody who's lost somebody, like this ibogaine is incredible. And just to make the point, the Bwiti, the African tribe that used the iboga for millennia, they use it to get in touch with their ancestors. And so they take iboga until they commune with their ancestors. So I knew he was going to have some type of interaction with his mom and his son and, people he's lost, because he has lost a lot of people in his life. And that happened for him. And he was just like, wow, I realized I shouldn't even be alive right now, and I'm getting this second chance. I really got to make the most of it. And when he came out of that experience, he hold on one sec, I'm just gonna send this to voicemail. Okay. When he came out of that experience with the iboga, he said, I feel so good right now. This was like 48 hours later. He said, I feel so good right now. I think I can make a comeback in professional basketball. I feel mentally strong, physically strong. And we were driving in the van. It was funny because his bodyguard trainer was with us the whole time. And the guy heard Lamar say that, and he was like, Lamar, take it easy, dude. You're 40 years old. You'd have to work out 4 hours a day, and you can't be smoking marijuana. Lamar was like, yeah, no, I know what I got to do. I've done it before, and I'm going to do it right now. And without anybody training him or anything or motivating him, he just went to the gym. And about 9 months later, he wound up playing in a professional game in Dubai for the Philippines team. And it was like a personal rocky moment that he would get back on that court and play and have fun. It's Lamar and I did a movie called Lamar Odom Reborn that chronicles this psychedelic intervention that I gave him. It's on YouTube, it's on Amazon Prime. He he said in the movie, at the end of the movie, he's like, you know what? He goes, I know I'm not the player that I used to be, but he's like, just to get out there and have fun and, prove to myself that I still got it. He's like, that was like, I want that for everybody. And so, this is so powerful. There's nothing else outside of psychedelics that can heal. We've got a fentanyl problem, of course. And, these aren't drug addicts that are like weak-minded people. These are just like regular people who are having an injury or surgery, and they're in pain, legit pain. They take up the drugs, the painkillers, and then after they can't get them anymore, they're still in pain. They have to go and try and get them on the street, and then they're laced with fentanyl. Now you're addicted to fentanyl, and it's like if we have ibogaine, this iboga that can get people out of a fentanyl addiction, we have to embrace this like today, not even tomorrow, because
Today,
yeah,
yesterday.
yeah. So that's my backstory. I'm happy to
Oh,
find myself here and to meet doctors
incredible.
like you. Like I meet you recently, and I'm like, wow, this is so cool. Like actual empathetic doctors are coming into this space. This is amazing. I don't have to even fret anymore about where it's at.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much. Thank you so much. Thank you for the recognition. Thank you for the work that you are doing. I mean, you're just following, you're creating, you're taking the steps, you're taking action, and you're creating. And with that creation, you are changing millions of people's lives. I mean, that's so powerful, Zappy. It's like, what else? What else do you need in this life?
I know. Well, you know what? That's a good point because the reason I'm fighting so hard right now, I'm sitting here at my Mind Army headquarters, and that's my nonprofit. And the Mind Army, we are fighting for the right to pursue happiness. And we believe it's your inalienable right to be able to go inside your own mind for answers and healing. And so in 2024, we're not going to sit here and let people tell us that alcohol is good, tobacco is good, but somehow psilocybin and these other plant medicines, they're not good and they're off the table for you or your family, even if you're in crisis or suicidal. Nope, can't touch them. We're just like, you know what? Most doctors do not even know about nutrition, which could solve maybe 80% of the problems that they're working on. Why would we think they know about psychedelics? They don't. Ignore them completely and trust people like Johns Hopkins and University of California, San Francisco, where they've been doing this research. That trumps your internal medicine doctor in Boca Raton. Just do not listen to that person. They're going to put you on antidepressants. They're going to tell you to go to talk therapy, and they're not even going to make a connection between your health and what you're eating and putting in your body. So ignore them. And the reason that the Mind Army, like we want legalization immediately for plant medicine, given the pandemic and the emergency of, depression and PTSD that we all have coming out of the pandemic. We have some amount of PTSD. And then the addiction thing, we've got to, attack this really aggressively. And so we're fighting for legalization immediately, but we're going to stay vigilant because we know that what happens is once you get legalization, somebody in some special interest group or whatever they get in their mind, then they start to say, oh, well, yeah, we're going to limit the amount of psilocybin that can be in the thing and they just like muck it up. We're just not putting up with it at this point. We're saying we're in an actual crisis. This is like a sci-fi movie level of thing we have going on here, and people are very frozen in their fear because not just the pandemic, but actual fears. Putin might blow us up. The air is poison. You can't drink the water, all this stuff. And people are frozen. And so, how do you give somebody an evolutionary leap forward? The only way I've ever seen that where people have that leap and gain more empathy is they have a near death experience or they have a major psychedelic breakthrough. And you can't count on people having these near death experiences. So we've got to use these psychedelic compounds. They're God given, they're natural. I mean, having a mushroom microdose, people are like, oh, I'm a little bit nervous about that. I'm like, I'd be more nervous about drinking a Diet Coke than I would be about this minute amount of
I
mushroom.
love you. As I sit with doctors, I no longer work at the major institution that I was at. I had a very prestigious place in the institution, and I watched my colleagues down Cokes, Dr. Peppers all day, and I'm like, oh my God.
Oh,
And they're like, no, 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 your body, it's fine, it's fine. And guess what? You end up with colon cancer metastatic at age 35. And micro dose of psilocybin, that's right.
these doctors, it's weird because they don't connect even plant food and health. I'll make the point that when you after an operation, you're coming out and like the best thing in the world would be for you to eat whole foods and vitamin rich stuff. And meanwhile, they're like, what would you like? A Salisbury steak with some mashed potatoes and some boiled broccoli? And guess what? You can have as much ice cream as you want. It's like, are you kidding me? Like, this is where your science is at in 2024. No, thank you. The Mind Army is telling people, as the most radical organization in the psychedelic movement, we're saying ignore these institutions because on this matter, they just don't know. And you could lose your life or the life of one of your loved ones by listening to these people post pandemic in this very scary time where you need nature and plant medicine to disrupt the pattern that you're in.
And that is the sad, sad truth. And in the 90s, us physicians decided not to stand up for what is right against PPOs and HMOs and that whole thing that came up. We decided to be overwhelmed and stay in our trauma minds. Because, when you look at actually the history of doctors, majority of doctors are very traumatized individuals from childhood and on. And then they go into medicine because of their perfectionism issues or parental issues that has caused those traumas to, you got to meet this criteria to be accepted by the culture of the family. And then you take on the traumas of your patients and families and imagine like where we are operating from. It's taken a decade of work for me personally to be here today with you. A
Wow.
decade of intense inner work with and without psychedelics, really looking at myself from every angle possible. What am I doing? Why am I doing it? And then recognition of if I'm traumatized, how I'm propagating that in my institution as a physician leader that I was, and how I was watching all these other doctors and people of power create policies that are hurtful to not only the frontline physicians, the nurses, the patients, the families. I mean, it's
Wow.
unbelievable.
Kids are super lucky to be able to interface with you
Thank you.
because to have that medical background and the biology and all that, but to have done the actual work yourself on yourself. I mean, to me, every addiction, and this is why iboga works, is that every addiction is trauma based at the bottom
That's
line of
it.
it. You fix that, and if your nervous system is balanced, okay, and basically my friends have been saying this and I agree, is like everybody just wakes up every day trying to balance their nervous system. So you go through the day and you're like, I got to drink some coffee. I'm going to have some alcohol. I got to take an Ambien to go to sleep. Like you're just trying to get the balance. So when you start out with, let's say, psilocybin microdosing of mushrooms and you're taking that and then you're balanced, when you start thinking like, oh, should I eat something? And then you're like, nah, I don't need anything. Or should I drink coffee? Nah, it doesn't resonate with me. Like so amazing to be balanced. And I see the only way to get there, in my opinion, is through plant medicine, period.
And I'm going to couple it because what I see is plant medicine is absolutely life-changing, yes. But I'm going to bring a couple of other things in. What I have found in my own practices and also my clients and so forth is that you got to have practices. You got to commit to that evolution, to that growth, to that intention. And your own journey, how you shared how cool it was initially, and then you went into it with the intention of, oh, let me find out more about me. It was a different paradigm. It wasn't this like, oh, let me lose my mind and see more atoms. I got the lesson there. Let me move to a paradigm where there's growth and evolution of self and self-discovery.
Yeah.
And that's, integration of life practices. I call them conscious life practices. They are what you'd call their meditation, breathing, really optimizing your nervous system, neurobiology, and your physiology, and connecting with yourself spiritually, and then being able to uplift your community. And community is
Yeah.
very important. Because remember when Lamar talked at PsychCon in Vegas and you guys were up at the podium, he brought that back a lot actually in connection with you and how he was really able to get through his addictions. I don't know the details of what he was going through, but with even ibogaine, he talked about, hey, I had Zappy alongside on the path with me, and the support from him and from my community really shaped, the rest of, even if things were coming up for him, the integration process I think is really important.
Yeah, no, that's a huge point. I'll make the point that with Lamar as a psychedelic concierge, my job is to get to the bottom of what it is that client is trying to, what's their intention, what are they trying to achieve, and then secondly, what are the traumas they're trying to overcome. And so I like a
Yes.
concierge at a hotel. That's why I like this moniker, because number one, I'm not giving anything to anyone. I'm not a shaman or anything like that. I'm just concierging. And I make the point that I came up with a formula from Lamar, and it wasn't just a one stop thing. It was basically, it was ketamine, plus plant medicine plus a daily practice equals a conscious transformation. And
Yeah.
so what's cool about psychedelics to me is that after you have the experience, you built that pattern. And when I'm a 30-year meditator, and sometimes even for me, it's difficult to get in there and transcend based on what's happening in my day or in that moment or something like that. And what I've noticed is after some of my psychedelic experiences, I can close my eyes, and before I even start doing the mantra, I just like drop into this pattern. I drop really deep. So these are biohacks of nature, is how I'm putting it right now. And
Mm.
I'm saying to people, I would not want to die and be at the pearly gates and God's there. And she says, what are you doing here? And I'm like, oh, I died of this. And God's like, well, what about all those natural things I put there to help you with this? And I'm like, oh, well, yeah, well, I didn't take them because this guy in a white coat told me not to. And God's going to be like, oh, okay, well, now you're about to go back for another 100 lifetimes until you figure out how to think for yourself. And so I just feel like the reason I put such importance on the psychedelic part is if you just do the meditation and the breathing and the all these being in nature, whatever it is, if you can't get yourself in a present moment awareness through that, if you can't transcend your human filters, it's going to just be a band-aid. It's just going to be something that you're using to battle back whatever, traumas and patterns you have in your head. Like we said, they've shown that with these mice, they did an experiment where they were showing the mice a purple light and then they were shocking them, and they kept doing this, and eventually they would turn on the purple light and the mice would go into a shock reflex, curl up in the corner without even getting shocked. So the purple light, then they looked at the children of those mice, and when they put the purple light on, their children went into a shock reflex.
Wow.
And their grandchildren, their great grandchildren, went back 13 generations of trauma before that cleared, and they showed the purple light. And so you're talking about, we all have in our DNA stored every horrifying thing that happened to our great, 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 great grandparents, and it's in there. And some of this stuff you're getting triggered by might not even be your own thing. It's just you have to have a biohack to reset yourself into, I'm here in the present moment and I'm going forward. And that's what, ketamine and ibogaine, and these are pattern interrupters that can interrupt even DNA patterns and things like that. So I'm blown away by, the fact that psychedelics, nature's so intelligent that it's
Yes.
bringing out these plants, knowing that humans are disrupted with addiction and mental illness. It's doing it. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And we have
coming
to.
along.
We have to. And there's no other way, Zappy, that I've sat with, and all of us see it. Like, where are we going? We're definitely not going in the right trajectory. So we have to step in. And one of my psilocybin journeys, the last one that I had was a few years ago. And that's what was told to me after I'd gone through figuring out my own traumas of childhood, living in war for the first 8 years of my life under the terrorist regime in Iran, and for the first 14 years of my life, and then immigrating to America, not knowing any English, none. That was in 95, and I was put in a regular, amazing high school, public school with other American children. Didn't know anything about the culture, no language, and so it was very depressing and very traumatic just to immigrate, though I found a lot more freedoms in particular ways, of course, as time went on.
Oh, what a
Pretty
great
well, I would say.
story. Wow.
Thank you.
I don't think if I were you, I'd be sitting here because I didn't even have to experience that. I definitely would be speaking very slowly if this was my second language. But no, I want to say that what's exciting to me, the most exciting to me about ketamine, and as soon as I did it, I had the experience with the doctor, and I was like, oh my God, like that was the best part of my ayahuasca experience. But with all the dieting and integration, I didn't need that because the ketamine isn't a plant medicine. It's actually made from some salts and things. They process salt and they get this ketamine crystal. Because it's this mini micro tuning crystal, it's the same across billions of molecules. It's not like mushrooms where one mushroom in the same tray could have all kinds of psychedelic properties. The other one has nothing. You really don't know because of the soil and who harvested and who picked it and made it, whatever it is. But the ketamine, it's so consistent. I find it never goes into a bad trip or anything. It's just very down the middle. And so for me, I feel like, people are frozen. They're in this trauma frozen and they need a pattern interrupt. And you take the ketamine and all of a sudden, all that chatter, you're sitting there with your eyes closed right there, all the chatter goes away. You're in present moment awareness. And so when you come out 35 minutes later, you are kind of transformed because you're like, wow, like I don't have chatter and I'm right here in the present going forward. And I make this point about the ketamine, how powerful it is. The number one side effect is it breaks suicidal ideation. If somebody's in thinking about suicide and they're talking that way, immediately get them the ketamine because what happens is when you're in that experience in 35 minutes, while you're in present moment awareness without all this chatter, what happens is that usually when you're going to kill yourself, you think, hey, I only have two options. I either keep doing what I'm doing or I kill myself. That's it. Just these two things. And all of a sudden you're in the ketamine, your eyes are closed. And all of a sudden, like 10 more option sets open up. And you're like, wait a minute, I like doing that, which could, it might even lead to that. Oh, this is so interesting. Wow. Okay. And then you come out and you're like, I'm not suicidal. I'm intrigued. I'm fine. I want to see where this thing goes. And if you do a series of treatments and build up enough foundational new neural pathways of I'm here in the present and I'm going forward, that's how you clear this stuff. And I had an experience where I intentionally cleared something that was in my field that I needed to clear, and I got comfortable with ketamine stuff. And I had this business deal where I wasn't really in charge of it. I had started and everything, but my friends who were in charge of it, they wound up selling it very early and everybody made a bunch of money, but I knew that it was a bad thing. So, a couple of years later, when the person who bought it from us sold it for hundreds of millions more dollars, I was like, why would the universe like take this, 75 million from me? Like, why didn't I just get this? Why is that? And I just had like kind of like a chip on my shoulder about it. And I would have to see commercials on CNN for the brand. And it was like a trauma thing that I was like, why? And so I intentionally went into my ketamine, thought about it, I looked at it, and I had that realization that I was like, well, here you are. If that had happened, that's your path. And here you are in your path where you've been able to, make the reality of truth and share that, and these things. And it's like, and then I thought about it. I was like, yeah, you know what? I'd rather be on the path I'm on. So I'm glad I'm on the path. Okay. Never have to think about it again. And it was like, I can still think about it, but it doesn't have the same electrical charge that it used to have. And so I see people go in there with some intention to ketamine and really clear out some patterns, whether that's abuse or, things that have happened to just take the electric charge off. And so that's like so exciting that you can proactively use this crystal, this micro crystal to clear your trauma and to give you like an actual evolutionary leap because it's building new gray matter in your brains. It's a miracle. People always go, oh, this is, happy. You don't think this isn't a panacea? And I'm like, well, it's pretty close to a panacea, actually, because, all those people who have war trauma, like we were talking about in Ukraine and that kind of stuff, they can't just sit down and meditate or breathe. It's going to be very difficult. They actually need a pattern interrupt where they think to themselves, hey, you know what? This is going to be over at some point, and I'm me, and I'm going to go forward, and I'm okay. And if you can't get to that place on your own, which is very difficult, maybe, I don't know, a few percentage of people could get there on their own with their mind, you're going to have to use some kind of a pattern interruption like ketamine, which thank God it's so safe that they give it to babies. It's the number one anesthetic used by oral surgeons on children because it doesn't affect the breathing and all that. So this is a miracle, it's like absolutely ketamine saves society. And then probably psilocybin mushroom microdosing will be the thing that keeps people from balances their nervous system and keeps them from having to drink alcohol, take drugs, overeat for emotional trauma and all that stuff. And then lastly, like you and I were talking about before, I would love to see the Native Americans be the people who hold space for people to do peyote or mushrooms or have these journeys. Like they should be the group on their land where they first get these medicines for themselves, like ibogaine to break that trauma with alcohol and all that, meth and these things. And then they should be the ones that hold the space because, like you and I were saying, if you can have Las Vegas in this country where they have a place where you can get addicted to gambling, alcohol, drugs, everything else, if you have cures, you have to be able to send people, say, to New Mexico to go to a reservation and sit with these plant medicines and reboot yourself out of that disaster loop that you find yourself in. So it's an easy solution. That's what's so cool.
Yeah, it is. And if you figured it out, I mean, it takes a long time to get to this point. It's not an overnight situation, right?
Mhm.
Now I have a question for you. I think ketamine is awesome. I'm certified in it myself. I would love to hear your set and setting and whether what you're using currently is a slow infusion, is it IM injection, is it over multiple hours? Tell me about that.
Yeah. So what I've done is I believe from all the hundreds of people I've sat with and my own experience, and I've done group ketamines and individual ones, the best set and setting, it turns out, is to do it in your own home with a medical professional so that you don't have to be driven to some clinic or driven home, even worse, from some clinic or be in an Uber after you just had this transcendental experience. But if you know the thing about ketamine, you just want to be watched over. It's very safe, but the only thing that can happen is after it's over, you could fall or you could drown if there's water. So I started a service in Los Angeles. It's going to be nationwide, but in Los Angeles to begin with, called Keta VIP. And we send a nurse right out to your house. They do an intramuscular shot on you. They communicate with the doctor, and then they do an intramuscular shot of ketamine. About 20 minutes into that experience, which lasts about 35 minutes or so, about 20 minutes in, we nudge you and ask if you want to go deeper and metabolize more ketamine. Most people, of course, do. And they give you a second shot. And so the whole experience is less than a couple hours. You're in your house. Most of these are done at night and on weekends. So you can just relax on your own house in your own house or go to bed and you wake up the next day and it's like are rebooted. You feel amazing. You're clear. You don't have this trauma on top of you. And so that Keta VIP, I really believe that is the best way to do it, is to do an intramuscular shot, because the difference is, and I want to make this point really clear, any abuse of ketamine that you're seeing in nightclubs and people talking about people doing ketamine right now recreationally, those people are snorting the ketamine up their nose like you do with cocaine. They're snorting it. And anytime you snort anything, like it's going to go in your nasal cavity and hit your opiate receptors. So it can be very addictive because it's hitting your opiate receptors, it hits your ocular nerve. It's just not the same thing as medical ketamine. And by medical ketamine, I'm talking about an injection of ketamine or maybe a lozenge that melts in your mouth and goes into your mucosa. But the lozenges, the problem with it is the bioavailability is all over the map. Some people get a little bit, some get a lot, depends on all kinds of factors. With the intramuscular shot, if you give somebody 100 milligrams of ketamine, they're getting 100 milligrams bioavailable. And so our technique is to give you the first shot, you're there, and then to give you a second shot, let you go deeper, and then you metabolize more ketamine than you otherwise would have if you went into a clinic and got, one shot or one IV kind of thing. And so there's the third way that people do it is in some of these clinics is intravenous, and they'll drip it over 45 minutes. I don't happen to like that as much as the intramuscular because when you do the intramuscular, you're getting all the medicine at the same time. And the point of ketamine and the reason that it's different than all the other psychedelics, all the other ones are hallucinogenics, but the ketamine is a dissociative. So it's dissociating, it's separating your left and right brain and just letting them communicate without your ego getting involved. And so you want people to get deep enough that they actually get that dissociation. And unfortunately, a lot of clinics and anesthesiologists and people don't really have the experience with the experience itself and things. So they just dose you low and they have no idea. And then they just send you out into the parking lot. And so what we do is we are coming in there, we're, giving you the preparation. We give you the experience. The nurse is there the whole time until you're ready and they leave hours later. And then a few days later, we do an integration call over Zoom with a ketamine assisted therapist who can help you to integrate that experience, give you the feedback loop that it is as incredible as it seems. And with the Keta VIP, we want to create some community as well where, you can get those feedback loops from other people, be part of group events, be part of things. So this is the solution. It's not inexpensive in that it's not covered by insurance right now because unfortunately, there's a lot more money in keeping people ill than just getting them all of a sudden better. So that
Yep.
is a situation. But I want to make one point. This is the most exciting thing about the psychedelic industry is that everybody, when you talk to them, they go, Zappy, this sounds amazing, but what about the pharmaceutical companies? Aren't they going to suppress this? And I say no, because on our side, we have an even bigger 800-pound gorilla, bigger than the pharmaceutical companies, which is the health insurance companies like United Healthcare, Kaiser. These are the guys who are buying all the pharmaceutical pills for everybody. And those guys, I've been in the room with them, I've been in their research places, and they're telling the pharmaceutical companies, you guys need to get to these psychedelics right now because we're not going to pay for these expensive antipsychotics. We don't like paying for people going into the emergency room on a Saturday night having a panic attack. This is no. If ketamine, the psilocybin mushrooms can be effective, we want these out. Start doing the research. And you've started seeing a couple weeks ago, one of the major pharmaceuticals, AbbVie, just made an investment or partnership with Gilgamesh, a psychedelic company, all kinds of things happening in the space. United Healthcare themselves, they consulted to the top people there, and they're doing a side-by-side with ketamine versus Johnson and Johnson's very expensive S-ketamine, which is like a mirror molecule that they came up with where they were like,
Spravato.
Spravato, they're like, we get to charge insurance tens of thousands of dollars instead of this cheap ketamine that anybody can
It's
access.
$50 a vial that can be used for how many sessions? I don't know.
Yeah, regular ketamine, it's like $5 a treatment, but with the Spravato, you've got thousands per treatment that they're billing insurance, and the highest dose they can give you with the Spravato is 26 milligrams in one nostril, 26 in the other, so that's 52 milligrams. The bioavailability, you're probably wind up getting like 15 milligrams of the ketamine. And when we do an intramuscular, you're getting between the two shots 100 milligrams. Number one, you're going to dissociate, which is the point. And then secondly, you're going to have built that much more new neural pathways than you could ever get with all these treatments of the S-ketamine. So I commend United Healthcare and Kaiser and these guys, and they're stepping into it, and they're not going to let the pharmaceutical companies dictate how quickly psychedelics are or how much longer they're inaccessible. It's about to be very accessible through that.
Amazing. And this is exactly what we need. We need massive shifts in our consciousness and how we do things and how we treat people. And that's my passion in what I do as I've gone through my journey is let's shift how we practice medicine because it is not working and doctors aren't happy and patients aren't happy. Then what are we doing? My grandfather in Iran was an internal medicine physician for 40 years and he died when I was 12, but he left such a beautiful impression. He was the most humane person I've ever known. He knew 2,000 lines of Persian poetry by heart. And he would tell us stories. He would be with patients and really sit with them and have a sacred relationship with them. He would hold space for them, not just push drugs on them. There would be stories that he would get paid in. It was so sweet in eggs, and the community just loved him. He became the director for the health department in Tehran back in the day, which is a huge deal. Came from a very poor family from outside of Tehran and got sponsored by his uncle. to become a physician, was the first in his family for generations to even go to school, and became a doctor. And
Wow.
provided a beautiful life for his family and for his community. So that's where I come from. And I came to America and I'm like, oh my God, this is could not be further away from that utopic medical model that I was raised with, that dream model. And so doing the work that I do in psychedelics is that taking a group of physicians to Mexico in August for a psilocybin retreat. And for this reason, we need to get through our traumas.
I want to tell you, I did a group of doctors with a psychedelic weekend. The highlight was our group ketamine experience on a Saturday night. And those were Yale doctors and Harvard doctors and all these people. And I'd say out of the 25 people in the group, 18 of them had never done psychedelics before. And so this ketamine was going to be their first one. And they had such an incredible experience to a person. They fixed their relationship with their mother. They figured out what they wanted to do next. They lost their fear of death. It was like, we went around the room. I was like, oh my God, like this would take years of heavy therapy for some of these people to get right
Yes.
here. And just got there in the last hour. So I really believe that what you're doing with the doctors here, this is very important because of course, celebrity, we're living in a celebrity driven culture. So people want to know what they're doing and follow them and be like them. But really the people who can change the society and the medical system. We've got to get the doctors now and the politicians to have
Yeah.
these experiences and realize, wow, this is the solution. It's part of the solution. And we don't have a solution really probably without it en masse because,
Yeah.
you know, coming back to that empathy crisis I was talking about that society's having, if we could get a critical mass of people to go inside their own minds and emerge with more empathy, if we had a raised level of empathy, we could solve any problem we have as a society. We could, just collectively come up with a solution, even think about things like, oh, wait, what about water in 50 years? Things that we're not even contemplating because our empathy's not there for that kind of thing. So I think the empathy crisis will be solved by the psychedelics. And I just want to make one more point. I was telling you about it before. The water, like what does water have to do with the mind army? And the mind army, we believe water is your inalienable right. And the reality is you can live without food for quite a long time. You can live without everything, but without water, you're going to die in a couple of days. And so how do we secure our water situation? The Mind Arm is saying this is a fundamental right. And so we're here in Florida and we came together with a company called Altitude Water, where it's actually extracting the moisture from the air, cleaning it, filtering it, remineralizing it, and making this fresh water from the air. And it's unlimited. I got a machine right over here, makes 10, 12 gallons a day of the best, freshest water. And then we ozonate it every 20 minutes. So it's clean and very oxygen rich, this water. And so the Mind Army did a mobile emergency unit where we have a machine that makes 200 gallons of water a day in the back of this trailer with dispensers. And we're going to bring that thing around to disasters, hurricanes, fires and stuff. Just pull up and say, hey, first responders, victims, you got 200 gallons of fresh water a day. We have solar on it. So it's literally free water. And I'm like, why would people be drinking water right now from the ground that we know now, even if it's from a deep glacier or some mountain or whatever it is, water that comes from the water table in the ground anywhere other than the air has fertilizer, pesticides, lithium, microplastics, all in these water. People are drinking water bottles that have microplastic. And instead, just like plant medicine, going back to nature, which is what the Mind Army is about, is just like think for yourself, go back to nature. Okay, we've got the plants to help us, and we've got the water right here in the air. Let's just take it from there and try to suck it out of the ground and filter out all these horrendous poison. And so the Mind Army, I would invite everybody to come to mindarmy.org, support the cause. We are fighting for legalization. We're bringing out, real solutions. And these are very, very easy, simple. It's like go back to nature. Take your water from the sun and the air. Get your medicine from the plant that exists. let somebody process this thing to a point where you're dependent on them. And in the water situation, if you have one of these machines in 12 gallons a day, you're water independent. You're not counting on the local government municipality to keep your water clean, which we've seen, in Flint, Michigan, and the other day a pipe broke in Atlanta and people had to boil their water. You are independent of them and independent of these plastic water bottle companies. And so in this way, I want to just really encourage people to go back to nature. That's what this campaign is about. All the solutions are there. It's not difficult. You just have to think a little bit differently. And after the pandemic, either that's causing you to think differently, or hopefully you can have some, proper set and setting psychedelic experience where you can just think different for the rest of your life.
Incredible. Incredible. And I'm so curious. I know we don't have much time, but so curious about the technology that you guys came up with. I don't know the history behind it with the water. Like that is
Yeah.
and does the humidity of air, like, the New Mexico is pretty dry. So,
Yeah.
in Florida, you have humidity is like 97% during the, summer months. And Atlanta, I lived in Atlanta for 17 years and you just come out drenched. And so my question is how does the humidity of the air where you live affect it? And how
Yeah.
accessible is this machine to households?
Yeah. So it's actually very accessible, but to the point about the water, obviously, the more humidity you have in the air, the more water you're going to be able to make. The machines are very intelligent and they're getting more intelligent. So in places where there's like a morning dew and things, the machine can work very efficiently in the morning time and not necessarily work during the afternoon and things where the sun's blazing. There's very low humidity to pull from the air. So in some places you're going to make a lot of water. Some places you might make less. And in some places you need to be strategically positioned. Anybody who's living like near a golf course, let's say in Arizona or New Mexico or anything, there's a lot of humidity in that air at different times that the machine can pull from. And there's new ways. There's this new terraforma that's available that they're putting out. It's like a chia seed, basically, can hold 50 times its weight in water. So you put this terraform into the ground and you start to bring back these deserts into greens and holding water. And that's able to enhance how much water you're able to make. But for the moment, you think about Florida, Tennessee, Georgia, Louisiana, all of South America, Houston, like these places, they shouldn't be taking any water from the ground because A, it's poison, and B, it's, a waste to do it and truck these things in and have all these prices. Because especially in Florida, as soon as there's a hurricane, as soon as they announce there might be on TV, you go to the supermarket and there's no more water left. So now you're drinking tap water that you're boiling in this. Not me. I'm independent. I'm making 10, 12 gallons a day. My big machine's sitting there making 200 gallons a day. And anybody who's part of our network has water. And I think for communities, whether they're churches or a temple or mosque or community group or homeowners association, you've got to get your water secured. And there's all these people, Lita, that are like these prepping for doomsday people. And I ask them, I say, what's your water strategy? Like, well, I have 200 gallons of water stored in my basement. I'm like, oh, hey, that's great. What are you doing after, 100, 200 days about your water? And and so it's like, if you don't have your water, I'm like, if you don't have your water secured like this, then on the 201st day, somebody else is going to be eating your food and you're going to be dead. Let's start thinking about this. And the way you get people to think, is to open their minds and just give them, a better platform to think from. And I think if you're thinking straight, you realize that if there is a God, which I happen to believe there's intelligence in the universe, that if there is a God and God's all knowing and all the religions say, yes, God knows everything. Okay, well, then God would have known that we're going to go through a pandemic and have a fentanyl crisis. Wouldn't that God have been intelligent enough to leave some natural things here to help us to heal from that? And like, I don't even care who you are. They're just kind of like, yeah, I guess that does make sense if God knows everything. Okay. So it's like, just whatever way, if it's religious, if it's, scientifically, it's just like we have these things available if we're thinking properly about them, then we'll know how to, work with them and enhance them, make them safer. Because, people are like, well, maybe the government just doesn't feel safe yet with psychedelics. That's why they haven't put them out. And that's why they're on Schedule 1. And I have to say, well, okay, well, Schedule 1 means that it has no medical benefit and that it could be highly addictive. I'm like, first of all, psychedelics are totally non-addictive and they have major health benefits. So that doesn't work. And then secondly, if that's your definition, then why aren't cigarettes on Schedule 1? They're highly addictive and they're killing all these people.
Opioids.
Yeah, or opioid. I mean, those at least have a use.
Sure.
But a cigarette, I mean, like,
Right.
that's like the definition of, no medical benefit, highly addictive.
Truth.
But they're not on Schedule 1. No. So that means we have something bigger going on here. And we, as the citizens, post-pandemic, have to just demand our right back and just say, hey, 2024, we're going to do what we want to do.
I love it. Love it. Zappy, how can people find you and the amazing work that you're doing? Tell us all the ways. And it's all going to be in the show notes.
Beautiful. Okay. So definitely check out mindarmy.org. And you can also see me on at Zappy Zapolin, Zappy, Zapolin, Zapolin, like a violin, Zappy Zapolin. I'm at Zappy Zapolin. I have zappyzapolin.com. You can check out what I'm doing. But get involved because, we're so early in the psychedelic industry. I worked on Wall Street, like I said. I was a vice president at Bear Stearns, and I'm bringing that knowledge to this. And I'm saying to people, we're in the first inning of this new business. And when I've been in the beginning of a $1 trillion industry like the internet, legal cannabis, cryptocurrency, AI, when you're in the beginning of these things, if you can make a few very small investments in high quality things, you can create generational wealth for your family. So there's already 3 or 4 psychedelic companies that have major funding to do their research. If you as an investor invest in some of those companies, follow me and I'll let you know which ones and when to sell and all that kind of stuff. But if you get in now, very similar to like when the pharma companies in the 1980s came out or the biotech companies in the 1980s, if you put a very small amount, hundreds of dollars into there, you can create generational wealth. Don't sell it. Don't even look at it. But when you lift your head up in the next few years or 10 years or whatever it is, you will have created a fortune because you were in at the beginning of one of these $1 trillion industries. And so I encourage people, if you're listening, you're super early because of Lita, and who deserves more to make money right now than you people? Definitely not the people who are going to come later who are just in it for the money. I assume if you get turned on to this, you make money, you're a high conscious person, you're thinking different, you're going to use that money in a better way than these investors and these institutions that are going to come in the next, 6 months, 12 months when California goes legal and this happens and that. They're going to make all the money. So I'd rather be people who are hearing about it today. And so, Lita, you're way ahead of the curve, and it's just one more way from psychedelics.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Zappy. What a gem. Thank you. Thank you for everything that you're doing.
Thank you for being a doctor and bringing all that knowledge, but bringing it, to this space, because we really need that credibility because people, even though the Harvard studies have been done and Johns Hopkins, we need people to transform that knowledge into us regular people. And that can really only be doctors. So, as one of the first, I want to say that I intend to keep following you and, being educated about how these two, the old paradigm of medical and this new paradigm, how they come together and what the future looks like. So
thank you so much. Thank you.